About the object selection tool that is new in this version of Photoshop and how we can select something complex like hair. Before, with selecting hair, we'd have to go in and use channels and work really hard, and these new tools have been fantastic for doing something difficult like this. I'm going to use my object selection tool, and with the rectangular mode in the options bar, I'm just going to draw a rectangle over this guy. Stock photo, selects everything, looks good, but of course when we zoom in on it, it's really hard to tell how good his hair is selected. Now, selections only show us where the items are very, not loosely, but not completely accurately. And selections, when we see the marching ants here, anything with the marching ants is going to be selected. But what happens if we have like little thin wisps of hair where the pixels are selected, but they're selected very lightly? I'm going to talk about that because we can actually see selections of things, especially when we have a soft selection. The marching ants here don't really completely accurately represent what's going on with the hair. So let's jump into our Select and Mask by either going into the Select menu and choosing Select and Mask, or select the Select and Mask button. Here we come up with our properties, and in this case I want to view this on a background that is different from when we started. So we were on a white background. I want to preview this on a black background to see how good or how not good our initial selection was. So here on the opacity slider here on the preview, this gives us a pretty good idea where we can kind of see where we are with his hair. Now, his shirt and his face, everything worked really good with this quick selection or the object selection tool, so I'm liking this pretty good. But what I want to do is I want to get a better selection around the hair. Let's zoom in a little bit. I'm just using my Command plus and then holding down my space bar to get my hand tool, but here we have a zoom tool and a hand tool over here in the toolbar on the left-hand side. Here what I'd like to do in the Properties panel in our Select and Mask is do the Smart Radius button. Now I'm going to start adjusting the radius here to have it try to figure out how we can best select around that area. Okay, and see his hair. See how we start to get those areas here, and this is looking a whole lot better. I can go in and keep adjusting the smart radius here, and it's like, okay, this is looking pretty good. It's not perfect. Again, none of these selection tools are like absolutely rock solid perfect here. But I'm going to keep going in and I'm going to keep adjusting this, and I'm messing with the opacity here so I can kind of see what that looks like overall. And I darken and lighten the opacity to see, and it's like, okay, you know, I think I'm liking this pretty good right there. All right, so wow, I mean, it's like pretty awesome to be able to go in and select the hair. Now, one thing that you do have to be careful with this on is that I've set the smart radius up and I've been looking at this, but I haven't really been looking at his face either. Now you can see some of these areas down here around his collar and also in his ear have started to be kind of like taken away. And you can see that his ear has a little bit of darkness to it. And that's because those areas are, you know, as I adjust the background, you can see what's happening with those areas of his ear right here. Those areas are kind of like being taken away from this smart selection tool. Okay, so I don't want to lose or, you know, kind of put soft holes in his ears or along his face right here. So what I'm going to do is I can go over to my quick selection tool here, and I've got my add and subtract mode, and I can hold down my shift key to add or option or alt to subtract. And I can also increase or decrease the size of my quick selection tool by either using the size, little scrubby up here, or my cool trick of right bracket and left bracket. Okay? So if I go over to his ear, I definitely don't want to have these areas of darkness showing through his ear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the Add tool, or with the Add Quick Selection tool, and I'm just going to click on those areas of his face and of his hair that I don't want to have taken away. And again, just like we were using the Quick Selection tool before, I want to make sure my quick selection tool stays well within the area. I don't want to make a huge tool here and be really sloppy. Think of this as a paintbrush. If you only want to paint this, don't get a big paintbrush. So I'm going to reduce that down in size by using my left bracket, and I'm going to paint over those areas there. Okay. The black areas are basically where the selection isn't. Okay. That's going to leave us a hole when we exit out of our select and mask mode. So here I want to add to that, so it's telling the selection area, and also working with my smart radius here, not to go ahead and take apart those areas. And this on his jawline too, this would be an area that I would not want to have a slight hole in his face when I'm doing this. So I can paint over that a few times and say, no, I want to include that, get a little bit larger brush by using my right bracket. And I would go through and do this on his face. Okay, any place else that I see where that looks. Now this little soft edge is really nice because what this does is, if I put this on a different colored background, whenever you shoot a subject, you're always going to get some bounce. You're always going to get some reflection from the background. And so this edge is going to give me a soft edge, and just that little peach fuzz on his face is going to actually pick up that slight bounce of color. So this could be really good. So I'm going to zoom back out here using my Command minus. And overall, I think this looks pretty awesome. Okay, remember, the whole point of the quick selection, or the select and mask, is to see exactly what this is going to look like, okay? This is what it's going to look like. If you are not pleased with this, we can go through and we can work with this. I am going to set the feather to my normally prescribed 0.2 pixels here to just clean up those edges just a little bit. Then I'm going to click OK. Okay, so there's my entire area, and that's looking pretty good. If I want to get rid of the background, I can click on that lock on my background layer. If I hit delete, I'm going to delete him because he is selected. So I'm going to go into the select menu. I'm going to choose inverse. And now I can delete that background, and make sure you deselect your layer. Go into the select menu, hit deselect, Command D. Now let's see how good of a job that object selection worked and the refinement that we did in the select and mask. Now, if we zoom in here, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, that looks really good. But let's test it. Let's go down to the bottom of our layers panel, click on the half moon. Let's apply a solid color fill layer. Pops up our fill layer, pops up our color picker. I'm going to choose a color here. I'm going to click OK. Puts my fill color there, and we can double click on that to fill that color if we want to change it. Now let's drag this layer down below this guy and see how that works. You know, that looks pretty good. It is not absolutely perfect. Okay, we do have a little bit of spotting in here, but you know what? For going in here and getting that about 95% of the way, that is pretty awesome. So this works really, really, really good. This last version of Photoshop that they released the end of 2019, this really made a huge difference. But this is how we can use our select and mask to be able to get in and refine the edge, something that without the select and mask was really difficult to do previously.